I knew this weekend would change something. I just didn't expect it to be me. That thought followed me like a whisper as the highway stretched endlessly before us, the tires humming a quiet rhythm beneath our rented car. I stared out the window, pretending to admire the blur of golden hills and crooked trees, but really, I was counting the seconds until he looked over again. He was driving, of course confident, casual, one hand draped over the wheel, the other fiddling with the volume dial of the playlist we'd curated years ago in college. I hadn't heard some of these songs in months, maybe longer. Yet the lyrics felt like old friends slipping into the back seat with us, unnoticed but deeply familiar. "Still think this was a dumb idea?" he asked suddenly, shooting me a crooked grin, the kind that made my chest feel like it was caught mid-breath. I scoffed, playing it cool. "If I did, I'd have let you go camping alone and watched the headlines. Local man eaten by squirrel while pitching tent." He laughed a deep, unfiltered kind of laugh, and the sound of it felt like sunlight on skin, warm, easy, dangerous. And the way it made me want to lean closer, just to hear it again. That was the problem, wasn't it? We'd been best friends since junior year. He'd crashed a party I was hosting, drank the last of my cheap whiskey, and then passed out on my couch like he belonged there, and somehow, he always had, ever since. Now we were older, working jobs. We didn't talk much about living in different cities. The spontaneous road trip to this remote cabin, our reset button, had seemed harmless enough when he proposed it over voice notes 2 weeks ago. But somewhere between packing shared snacks and choosing who gets the O, I realized I wasn't just nostalgic. I was hoping, and that terrified me. He glanced at me again, this time holding the look a little longer. "You all right? You've gone all quiet. That's never a good sign." I forced a smile, just thinking. He tilted his head. "About what?" "You. I was trying to remember if you ever learned how to make a fire. That doesn't require lighter fluid and a minor explosion." He smirked. So you're bracing for survival. Got it." We turned off the main road shortly after that, the tires crunching over gravel as we pulled up to a modest wood cabin tucked beneath rows of tall whispering trees. It was exactly how I remembered from our last visit 2 years ago. The same uneven porch, same creaky screen door, same wind chimes tangled and half broken, but everything felt different now. I carried our duffel bags inside while he inspected the dusty fridge and cracked open 2 beers, handing me one like a peace offering. His fingers brushed mine barely, accidentally, and I felt it. That telltale skip of my heartbeat, the one I'd trained myself to ignore for too long. "I call the left bunk," he declared, tossing his jacket over the side of a worn mattress like a dog marking territory. I laughed and set mine down across from his. "Fine, but I'm not saving you when you fall off in the middle of the night again." He raised a brow. "You remember that?" I shrugged, suddenly nervous. "I remember a lot more than you think." He didn't respond right away, just looked at me a second longer than necessary before clinking his bottle against mine. "To remembering," he said softly. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "To forgetting, too." As the sun dipped lower and the sky turned honey-colored behind the trees, I sat there on that bunk, sipping warm beer and watching him move around the room like he still owned every inch of my comfort. And I knew, with a certainty that scared me, that something between us would shift this weekend. Maybe it already had, but I didn't know if it would break me, or finally set me free. By the time we unpacked and started a lazy fire in the outdoor pit, the light had dimmed into a soft violet spread across the treetops. He moved like he knew this place, how the logs stacked just right, how the fire pit liked to smoke before catching, how the spare matches were tucked behind the creaky wooden shelf. And maybe he did. Maybe he remembered more than I gave him credit for. "Still can't believe this place hasn't collapsed yet," he muttered, poking at the fire like it owed him something. "You think anyone else even knows it's here?" "I think it's Cursed, I said, stretching out on the folding chair beside him. Only appears to those foolish enough to come back. Lucky us, he grinned. That was always how we were familiar in ways I couldn't explain to anyone else. We had an entire language between us built out of sarcasm, eye rolls, unfinished thoughts, and midnight snack rituals. I'd never had that with anyone else. And sometimes I wondered if he knew it too, if he felt the same strange gravity when I sat next to him like I belonged there. We talked until the stars came out, about stupid things at first, office drama, weird neighbors, old classmates we hadn't thought about in years. But then it shifted, the way it always did, slower, quieter. Whatever happened to that girl you were seeing? I asked carefully. He made a face. Natalie, was that her name? Yeah, he said. Didn't last. She said I wasn't present enough, which, fair. You've never been good at being present, I teased, nudging his arm. I am with you, he said before he could stop himself. And then it hung there too heavy for how casually he said it. I looked at him, waiting for the laugh, the playful brush off, but he just looked back, gaze steady, then blinked, looked away, took a long sip of his drink. The fire cracked between us like punctuation. Later that night, as we stepped inside, brushing pine needles from our clothes and flicking off spiders with exaggerated horror, we hit our first real issue. Wait, he said, staring at the bed. Where's the second sleeping bag? I froze. Are you kidding me? Nope. Only one here. That's yours, right? I looked at it, soft blue, slightly torn on one side, familiar from college trips. It's mine, but I thought you were bringing yours. I thought you were bringing both. Well, I didn't. He groaned and flopped onto the nearest bunk. I swear we had two. Where the hell did it go? I think you left it in your old car. He winced. Damn, you're probably right. We stared at each other for a beat. I shrugged. We can take turns. That's dumb, he said. I'll just sleep under extra blankets. Or, I said slowly, instantly regretting it, we can share it. Just for tonight. It's wide enough. He raised an eyebrow, a slow smile spreading. Well, didn't know you were so eager to spoon me. I threw a pillow at him. Shut up. It's practical. Sure, practical. He didn't push. Just kept grinning to himself like he knew something I didn't. And maybe he did, by the time we'd gotten ready for bed. Brushed our teeth in near silence, and slipped into the sleeping bag him first, me following like I wasn't overthinking. Every damn inch of space I was wide awake. His shoulder brushed mine. We were barely touching, but I felt every molecule of him, the warmth, the steady rise and fall of his breathing. His hand lay close to mine, not touching, just hovering like it was waiting for permission. You awake? He whispered. I swallowed. Yeah. A pause. This reminds me of that night in the cabin in Big Sur, he said. I remembered. God, I remembered. The year we graduated, we took a last-minute road trip, shared one twin mattress, and talked until the sun came up. He fell asleep halfway through a story about his dream job. I never told him I stayed awake for hours, just listening to him breathe. What about it? I asked, my voice soft. I don't know, he said. You didn't sleep much that night either. I froze. You knew. I always know. Silence. Then a soft laugh, not mocking, more like surprised. You're weird, he whispered. I know, but you're safe. Being with you feels like the world quiets down a little. He didn't say it like a confession, more like an offhand truth he'd carried for a while, and it landed like a pebble in my chest, rippling through things I wasn't ready to admit. I wanted to say something, anything, that I felt the same, that I'd felt it longer than I cared to admit, that sharing this sleeping bag felt less like an inconvenience and more like a wish come true. But ID in single quotes. Instead. I turned slightly toward him. His face was just inches from mine in the low light, and I could see the softness in his expression. He looked calm, Like this wasn't weird for him. Like this was easy. His eyes lingered on mine, and for a moment, the silence said more than either of us ever had. Then, he closed his eyes. Good night. I lay there, heart pounding, afraid to move, afraid of how close we were, afraid of how close I wanted us to be. The next morning, I woke to the sound of him softly snoring beside me. His back was warm against mine, his arm thrown loosely over my side, like it belonged there, like we had done this 1,000 times before. I didn't move, I just lay there, staring at the soft golden light bleeding through the old wooden blinds, holding my breath. Every muscle in my body ached with the weight of what this meant, what it could mean if I let it. Eventually, he stirred, yawned, shifted, and then realized we were still wrapped around each other. Shit, sorry, he muttered, pulling his arm back quickly. Didn't mean to cling. It's fine, I said, too fast, too calm. You were probably just cold, right? Yeah, cold. He rubbed the back of his neck, not meeting my eyes. We didn't talk about it after that, but we also didn't really return to normal. Not fully. Not the version of normal we'd maintained for years. Friendly, easy, safely platonic. There was a new silence now. Not awkward, just careful. We spent the afternoon hiking through the nearby trails, him leading the way like he knew where we were going. We brought snacks, teased each other about our stamina, or lack thereof, and even got lost twice. Still, we laughed. It was easy again. But something in me was changing. Each time he looked over his shoulder to check on me, each time he offered me his hand to help me over a log or pull me up a steep incline, each time his fingers curled around mine and stayed a second too long, I was unraveling. When we finally reached the clearing, the same one we found on our first trip, with the view that made everything below look impossibly far away, we sat in the grass and shared a bag of trail mix like kids on a field trip. He lay back, arms behind his head. God, I missed this. Missed me, I said before I could stop myself. He grinned, eyes still closed. Maybe. I looked at him for a long moment, the way the sunlight caught in his hair, the way his smile seemed softer here, away from the noise of the world. I wanted to ask him what maybe meant. I wanted to ask if he remembered the way his arm curled around me last night, the way his body leaned into mine like it had something to say, but I didn't. Coward. The tension hit its peak when we got back to the cabin, sweaty, dusty, exhausted. Realized the door wouldn't open. I swear it wasn't locked, I said, jiggling the handle. Did you close it too hard or something? I barely touched it, he said, crouching to inspect the latch. It's stuck. Swollen wood, maybe. We tried for 30 minutes, credit cards, shoulder bumps, even a half-hearted kick. Nothing. The nearest neighbors were miles away, and our phones had been useless since we arrived. Okay, he said eventually, hands on hips, chest rising with effort. We're locked out of the cabin. All we have are the bottles of water from our bags, a pocket knife, and a bag of trail mix. And no sleeping bag, I added. We looked at each other. I guess we sleep in the car tonight. The inside of the car was cramped, uncomfortable. The windows fogged almost immediately from our breath. We took off our shoes, reclined the seats back as far as they would go, and tried to pretend it wasn't weird, but it was. Especially when I shifted, trying to get comfortable, and ended up with my arm brushing his again. His warmth seeped into me like something I hadn't asked for, but desperately needed. He didn't move away. If anything, he leaned closer. My seat doesn't go back all the way, he murmured. This is a terrible plan, I swallowed. We could try lying across the back seat. He glanced at me. Both of us. There's room if we don't mind being close. He smiled at that. A slow, thoughtful smile. Do you? I didn't answer. Instead, I crawled into the back seat and lay on my side, leaving space behind me. He joined a second later, folding in behind me like he belonged there, like we'd been molded for this exact position. His chest pressed gently to my back. His breath brushed the back of my neck. I was certain he could hear my heart pounding. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. "Yeah," I lied. A beat passed. Then he whispered, "Me too. Just trying not to think about how weirdly natural this feels." And that's when I broke. Not with words, not with confessions, with stillness, with silence, with the way I stayed, unmoving, letting his arm fall around me again, not accidentally this time. Purposefully, his hand landed on my waist. Not low, not suggestive, just ... familiar. I didn't stop him. I didn't say anything, but inside, I was on fire. He must have fallen asleep like that. His breathing slowed, steady and deep, his grip softening slightly, but never letting go. I stayed awake, my eyes on the foggy window, the sky just visible through the glass, painted in pale gray and lavender. I felt everything, every heartbeat, every accidental shift of his body, the way his legs tangled slightly with mine, the quiet sound he made when he sighed in his sleep. I was terrified, because if this was just comfort to him, just casual, just instinct, I didn't know how I'd survive the aftermath. But if it wasn't, if this was something else, if he felt what I felt, then everything between us was about to change, and I didn't know if I was ready. But God, I wanted it anyway. The sun was just rising when I opened my eyes. His arm was still around me, his body curled along mine, warm and steady. For a moment, I let myself pretend this was our life. That waking up tangled together in the back seat of a car was something we did often, like it was ours to return to. But reality crept in, like cold air. He stirred behind me, breathing shifting, hand flexing slightly against my waist. "You awake?" he asked, voice hoarse from sleep. "Yeah." A pause. I didn't mean to fall asleep like that. I nodded, unsure what to say. My heart was already sprinting toward the edge of something I couldn't take back. "I didn't mind," I whispered. He was quiet again, and I almost regretted saying it. But then he exhaled slowly, and something in the way his hand didn't move told me he didn't mind either. We stayed like that for another minute, maybe 2, maybe 20. Time got strange when his fingers brushed gently against my side. Not quite a caress, more like curiosity. Like he was testing a boundary he didn't know existed until now. Finally, I sat up, shifting away from him. The space between us filled with all the things we hadn't said. I started. "Wait." His voice was quiet, but certain. I turned to look at him. His eyes were still soft with sleep, but there was something sharper behind them. Now, awareness? Fear? Maybe. Or something heavier. "I need to ask you something," he said slowly. I nodded, heart hammering. "Last night, the way that wasn't just comfort, was it?" I froze. He sat up too, leaning forward, elbows resting on his knees. "Because it didn't feel casual. Not to me." And he paused, rubbed his hands over his face. "I keep thinking I'm imagining it, but I'm not, am I?" I looked away, out the window, anywhere but at him. "You're not." His breath hitched slightly. "So, this is real." I nodded, feeling my throat tighten. "For me, it is. It's been real for a long time." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full. Heavy with years of avoidance, jokes made to dodge feelings, moments brushed off with sarcasm. He leaned back, hand raking through his hair. "God." I didn't say anything because I didn't want to ruin us, I said, forcing the words through the knot in my throat. "You've always been the most important person in my life. I couldn't risk losing that. But you've been holding this in." "Yes," I breathed. "And it's been killing me." He turned to look at me, really look, and for once there was no smirk, no teasing, no wall between us. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I didn't think you felt the same," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "And I didn't want you to pull away. He blinked slowly. What if I didn't pull away? My eyes snapped up to his. What if I've been trying to tell you in every stupid way except the right one? He said, voice cracking a little. What? If I've been just as scared? I swallowed hard. Then, we've wasted a lot of time. He nodded, eyes dropping to his hands. Yeah, we have. The air shifted then, like the world paused to let us catch up. I think I knew, he said quietly, when you didn't sleep that night in Big Sur, when we sat in the dark talking about the future, and you didn't say anything about someone else. When I caught you looking at me like I was the answer to a question you couldn't ask. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes, and I blinked hard to hold them back. I've been scared too, he admitted, of what it meant, of what I might feel, of what it would do to us. I laughed softly, brokenly. And here we are anyway. He reached for my hand, then hesitated, then took it. His fingers were warm, grounding. I looked down at them, our hands, finally linked like they were always meant to be. Tell me the truth, he said. What do you feel when I touch you like this? I looked at him, and this time I didn't look away, like I finally found the thing I've been trying not to want, I said. And it scares the hell out of me. He nodded. His thumb brushed the side of my hand, slow and gentle. Me too. We sat there like that for a moment, letting the fear live between us, but not win. Then he leaned forward, his forehead resting against mine. I don't want to be scared anymore, he whispered, and I didn't realize I was crying until he lifted his hand and wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb. His touch unbearably tender. He pulled back just enough to see my face. His eyes searched mine, silent, careful, waiting. I didn't hesitate this time. I leaned in, and when our lips met, it wasn't fireworks or some explosive revelation. It was peace. It was home. It was everything I'd been aching for, wrapped up in the soft press of his mouth against mine. The tentative way his hand cupped my jaw like I might slip away if he wasn't gentle enough. He kissed me like we had all the time in the world. No rush, no urgency, just honesty. Finally, when we pulled back, we stayed close, noses brushing, breath mingling. He smiled, shy, surprised, a little stunned. Well, he murmured, that was overdue. I let out a shaky laugh. Just a little. He held me then, arms wrapping around my back, pulling me close, until my head rested on his chest. His heart beat steady beneath my ear. I don't know what happens next, I admitted. Me either, he said, but I know I don't want to go back to pretending. I nodded against him. Me neither. The car was cramped, the air still, stale. We were sore and sleep-deprived and locked out of our cabin. But none of that mattered, because in that quiet space finally, we weren't avoiding it anymore. We were us, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The next few hours passed in a quiet kind of wonder. Neither of us said much. We didn't need to. There was something different in the way we sat together now, in the ease of our closeness, the calm between breaths, like we'd been holding our bodies too tightly for too long. And now we finally knew how to exhale. He rested his head against the car window, legs still curled against mine on the back seat. His hand hadn't left mine since the kiss. Not even when he dozed off for a bit, his fingers twitching every now and then, like he was afraid to let go. When he finally opened his eyes again, blinking slowly, he found me already watching him. You're staring, he said, voice still thick with sleep. I smiled. You have a weird sleep face. I'm trying to memorize it for blackmail purposes. He grinned. You really know how to kill the romance, don't you? Oh, sorry. I leaned in slightly. You have such a peaceful, beautiful, absolutely unhinged expression when you sleep. He laughed, and the sound was everything. Light, real, ours. It took him a second to grow serious again. He sat up, adjusting his hoodie, his fingers still loosely wrapped around mine. So, he began, careful. Now that we've crossed the line into scandalous backseat cuddling and emotional vulnerability, I chuckled. Yeah? He looked at me, and for once, there was no hesitation in his eyes. What happens now? That question sat heavy, between us, not in fear, but in weight, in meaning. I let myself think about it, about everything that came with this shift. The months of silence, of wondering if I was reading into things. The fear of losing him. The way my heart hadn't stopped racing since he kissed me. I don't know, I said honestly, but I know I want to figure it out with you. His expression softened. Yeah. He smiled and nudged my knee with his. Just so you know, I'm not good at this. Relationships, feelings. I laughed. I've noticed. But I want to try, he added quickly, earnest now. With you, not just as my best friend, as more. I blinked. My throat tightened again, but this time with joy. I'm not good at it either, I said, but I've been loving you quietly for a long time. Maybe now I can finally do it out loud. He leaned in and pressed his forehead to mine. God, you're gonna kill me with stuff like that. Too soft? No, just right. We sat in the car until the sky had shifted from pale blue to gold. Hunger eventually drove us out, and after breaking into a box of emergency granola bars and drinking warm water from the hiking bottles, we sat on the hood of the car in the morning sun, like two teenagers high on something that had nothing to do with sugar. I watched him stretch his arms behind him, his shirt lifting just slightly above his waistband. He caught me looking. What? He said, feigning offense. Objectifying me already. I raised an eyebrow. I thought we agreed. We were past pretending. He slid closer. Oh, we're so past pretending. He kissed me again slower, this time a little more sure, a little less afraid. When we pulled back, his fingers stayed on my cheek, tracing the edge of my jaw like he was trying to convince himself I was real. I'm glad we came here, he whispered. I'm glad you made me, I replied. He laughed. You were this close to backing out. I panicked, I admitted. You smiled at me like you knew I had feelings, and I thought, God, this is going to break me. And did it? I shook my head. No, you didn't break me. You made space for me. He didn't say anything after that. Just held me, leaned his head against mine, and breathed like the world had finally let him rest. Later, we broke into the cabin through the back window with the subtlety of two people trying not to die from laughter. He boosted me up by the hips, and I practically fell through the kitchen sink, landing with a groan and a bruised ego. He crawled in after me, cursing when his shirt snagged on a nail. We stood in the dust-covered kitchen, grinning like idiots, clothes rumpled, faces flushed. Romantic, he said. I'd call it cinematic, I replied, brushing dirt off my arms. Can't wait to tell our future children how we broke into a condemned cabin to celebrate our first kiss. He paused, then looked at me with that same softness. Our future, huh? Too soon. He smiled and shook his head. Not at all. We spent our last night at the cabin lying beneath the stars. This time on purpose, not stranded in a car, not tangled up in fear or uncertainty, but on a pair of old blankets we found tucked in the storage shed. They smelled like cedar and dust and something faintly familiar, like memory. He lay beside me, his head turned toward mine, our fingers intertwined lazily on the blanket between us. Neither of us felt the need to speak much. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, was full of understanding, of things already said, and the things that didn't need to be. He let out a long breath. You know what I keep thinking about. What? That night we watched the meteor shower upstate. Senior year, when I made you climb onto the roof of the dorms. I smiled, the memory soft around the edges now. You almost fell off. I'd do it again, he said. Except maybe now I'd pretend I wasn't trying to impress you. I looked at him. You were trying to impress me. He shrugged, trying to play it cool. Maybe. My heart tugged at the casual way he said it. Like this kind of honesty came easier now, like he was just starting to get used to the sound of his own feelings. He shifted closer. That night, when we watched the sky fall in streaks of light, I remember thinking, this is what peace feels like. And you were the reason. I swallowed hard. You've always been mine. He kissed me then, slow and gentle. It wasn't about passion or urgency. It was the kind of kiss that said stay. The kind of kiss that knew time didn't need to rush anymore. The next morning, as we packed up the car and loaded the last of our gear, I caught him tucking something small into his jacket pocket. A pine cone, the dumb little one he'd found near the fire pit the night we arrived, the one he tossed at me as a joke for souvenir purposes. You're actually keeping that? I asked, raising an eyebrow. He shrugged. Guess it means something now, because you threw it at me. No, he said, grinning. Because you threw it back and stayed? That stopped me. Just for a second. Stayed. The word echoed through me in a way I hadn't expected. I had stayed through fear, through confusion, through years of wondering if he could ever feel the same. And he had met me there, fully. As we got in the car and started the long drive back, the sun low in the sky behind us, he reached over and rested his hand on my knee. It was small, almost unconscious, but I felt it down to my ribs. This was new. Us, and yet, not it had been there all along, in the late-night phone calls, in the way he always saved the last slice of pizza for me, in the way I laughed harder with him than with anyone else. We'd just never given it a name. Until now, a few hours into the drive, somewhere between towns, he turned down the music and glanced at me. We're not going to be the same after this, are we? I looked at him, took his hand again. No, and thank God. He nodded slowly, smile twitching at the corners of his mouth. I don't want to go back to who we were. We don't have to. You think it'll be hard? He asked. Yes, I said honestly, but worth it. We fell into silence again, but this time it was thoughtful, peaceful. Then he said, I want to take you somewhere next month. I glanced over. Where? My family's cabin near the lake. I used to go there as a kid. I think you'd like it. Are you inviting me as your best friend, or your? He shot me a sideways look. Boyfriend. I grinned. Was wondering when you'd say it out loud. Well, he said, lacing our fingers tighter. Boyfriends go on lake trips. That's a rule, right? Sounds like one to me. When we pulled into my driveway hours later, the porch light was on. My apartment looked exactly as I'd left it, but everything inside me had shifted. He put the car in park but didn't move. I turned to him. You coming in? He nodded. Yeah, just 1 second. He pulled out the pine cone from his jacket pocket and set it on the dashboard, gently, like it was glass. What's that for? I asked. A reminder, he said. That something small started something big. I reached for his hand again, smiling as I pulled him out of the car and toward the front door, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just hoping. I was certain. This wasn't the end of our story. It was the beginning.